All right, what's up, world? We are live here for the episode 129 of the Think Big podcast. Want to make sure we are streaming both to YouTube and Instagram. There we go, streaming to IG. Perfect. All right, guys. If you're watching this in replay land, what's up? Welcome from the future. If you're watching this live right now, we appreciate you. We love having you here. Before we get started, make sure you share this episode out with a friend. I hear a revert. There we go. No more reverts on the back end. So tonight, we're going to be trying something out a little bit here. I told Sam I want to experiment slightly with this episode, doing something a little unusual. Typically, when you've been coming to the show, you guys have seen it. We are unscripted. We are having dialogue. It's back and forth Q&A. However, leading up to today's episode, I had wrapped up with some work earlier, so I sat down and I started to jot down ideas on what I wanted to talk about. And that led into me going into almost essay writing mode. Sam, it kind of felt like back when I was in college, I used to have to write these college thesis and these capstones. And I just went back into that place and I ended up putting all my thoughts together on paper. So I love when I do that. So we're going to start this episode off with me reading through the things that I wrote down. And that's going to segue us into a open dialogue between Sam and I, and between you guys and the audience. So be free to share your thoughts, your insights, and all that good stuff inside the comments. But I'm going to go ahead and jump over here. Sam, if you need to stop me, let me know because I'm not looking at the screen anymore. But, I want to cue this episode up because I've spent over 13 years studying the greats. I'm talking Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Les Brown, Eric Thomas, John Maxwell, Stephen Covey, Kobe Bryant, Oprah Winfrey, J.D. Rockefeller, Jocko Willing, David Goggins, Pace Morby, Ed Milet, David Meltzer, Matt Higgins, Beyonce, Steve Harvey, Rob Dyrdek, Andy Frisella, Wayne The Rock Johnson, Kevin Hart, Joe Rogan, Napoleon Hill, Robert Greene, 50 Cent, Jesse Itzler, Sarah Blakely, King Solomon, and so many more. I mean, I can literally list names until this episode's over, but I've read through text. I've read through the Bible. I've read through the Vedic text. I've read every book on personal development that one person could possibly get their hands on. And I think it's safe to say now that I've spent well over 10,000 hours being a student of personal development. And I would love to stand here and tell you guys that I am a guru, that I'm officially sage level master. I'm not. I'm not even close. However, I have learned a few things. This decade long accumulation of information hasn't been for nothing. All my studies allowed me to identify recurring patterns for success. There's dozens of patterns that I've been able to identify, patterns that, when duplicated, have personally, for me, led to explosions in my business. For example, in February of 2022, when I first tapped into one of these secret patterns, I 10x'd my revenue, going from having never made more than $9,000 in a month to making over $108,000 in a 30-day period. Patterns that have led to massive quantum leaps in my network and my social group. It's now commonplace for us to spend time with world-class athletes, multimillionaires, and for me recently, Hollywood film directors. And I wish I could share all of these patterns with y'all, but that would be a little unfair to my inner circle members, people who pay me tens of thousands of dollars to teach them these patterns and in principles. But I have gathered a little bit of information that I can speak about here tonight, a lesson that I've shared publicly in the past. So I don't think anyone's going to get upset with me sharing it right now, and it won't be unfair to my clients. In fact, the secret that I want to talk about tonight isn't really a secret at all. I can guarantee you that you've already been taught this secret and you've just been neglecting it. And so tonight, our job is to remind you of something that you already know, because people need to be reminded more often than they need to be taught. And the secret is discipline is the shortcut. If you're a student of theology, you're familiar with this verse from the Bible. It's in Hebrews. It says, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it." Now, I'd be lying to you if I said I never sought out this elusive philosopher's stone in life. And if you're not familiar with what a philosopher's stone is, yes, I'm a little bit of a nerd. Yes, I watch a lot of anime. It's a simple story that's been adapted through multiple cultures all throughout time. Every culture has this myth somewhere in its origin. And the myth goes something like this, that you're able to get this stone, this gem, a fountain that contains a magical source of energy that has the ability to create anything for you at will. So, for example, you can turn copper into gold, you can heal the sick. It with this magic elixir, you can create the elixir of life. And all of this can be done without needing to abide by the law of equivalent exchange. What's equivalent exchange? This is basically stating that in order to get something, you have to give something, and the something you give must be of equal value. In other words, there's no universe where you get something for nothing. And I, like most young men setting out in life, I wanted to find the secret to getting money, to getting girls, to getting recognition, to getting accomplishments, all without having to suffer by going through the work. Basically, I wanted my dream life for free. In fact, I had a saying, if it's faux free, it's faux me. And I jokingly still sometimes say that, but that's how I walked around. I really was thinking that I'm seeking the things that I don't have to work for. Well, guess what I found out? There is no such thing as a free lunch, at least not in this life. And so Bruce Lee was the one who first enlightened me to the power of discipline. And I don't know if he's the one who said it, but I associate him with that quote, discipline equals freedom. Now, Bruce Lee was one of the most accomplished kung fu masters of his time. He moved his family out of obscurity into fame. He started to create wealth. He fathered a form of martial arts called Jeet Kune Do. He became an internationally recognized superstar and managed to create a brand that surpassed his death. And at the root of his accomplishments, unwavering discipline. Here's a quote from Lee. It says, I fear not the man who practiced 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man who practiced one kick 10,000 times. What is the reality of practicing one kick 10,000 times? Let me list them out. You're going to become world class at that kick. You're going to be able to do things with that kick effortlessly under any circumstance. You'll be able to adapt that kick to any circumstance. You'll probably be excited at the start of your journey of getting 10,000 kicks. Somewhere in the middle, you're going to get absolutely bored to tears of doing the same kick over and over. You're going to question and doubt whether you should start learning something new. People are going to stop paying attention to you because you've gotten boring. You're going to stop seeing measurable improvement and you're going to hit a false plateau. You're going to slide back down the mountain of progression, even though you're doing everything you're supposed to. You're going to have silent debates with yourself in your heart and in your mind about whether or not you should keep pressing forward. You'll watch supporters come and go. You'll get re inspired and then quickly fall back down to another setback. You'll start becoming hyper aware of the amount of time that you've already spent working on this goal to realize that you're only around rep 6,000 and have 4,000 more to go without any noteworthy success to show yet. You'll start to become at with your journey. You're no longer going to need external validation to honor your commitments. Before you get to rep 10,000, you're actually going to arrive. You would have fully made up your mind that you're not going to stop until you get there. You're now going to be present for the journey, and you're no longer going to be running to get to a finish line. You're no longer going to be running to get to an accomplishment. You're running to run. You're kicking the kick. You're playing the game to play the game. You're going to be on rep. Who gives a fuck? Stopped measuring a long time ago. You're now free. Discipline is secret. Discipline is freedom. A few weeks back on a previous episode, you guys might remember this. We had our friend Stratton Brown come to the show, and we spoke about the motivation behind entrepreneurship. Why play the game to begin with? I mean, sure, there's money to be made, but you can make money a million different ways without all the scars and suffering. We all agreed that the one allure to this game that sucked us all in was the promise of freedom. Personally, I know I started chasing that dragon of freedom, but my question to you is, what is freedom? I would define freedom as the ability to do what you want, when you want, how you want, with who you want. Key word, ability. In other words, you can at any moment choose to go out and do the things you desire, which means you have some level of power and control over yourself and your circumstances. So, how do you get that power? You build it over time. As Sam would say, you stack skills, you pay the price. You take what is yours and you protect it while it's in your possession. You prepare yourself to play against all types of players. And yeah, this might sound a little aggressive, and that's because it is. See, there's an old saying that it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. See, for a warrior to exist in a garden, they must rely on discipline. If you were born during a war era, you wouldn't need to rely on discipline because necessity would breed the required skills from you. It's actually the peaceful times that you've got to watch out for. It's the comfort zones of life that are most dangerous. Discipline is subjecting yourself to discomfort and stress on purpose for the sake of growth so you can gain the ability to have what you want, when you want it, how you want it. Discipline is freedom. Kobe Bryant knew this well. During his career, he dominated the league. For outsiders observing him play, it could be easy to credit his success to innate talent, but that would be an insult to the sick work ethic Kobe cultivated throughout his lifetime. Tim Grover, his athletic trainer, and he was the athletic trainer for the greatest NBA players all throughout history, had deep insight to Kobe's work ethic. See, Tim started off his career by coaching number 23, Michael Jordan, who arguably is, in fact, one of the greatest. And so MJ was the first NBA player to hire a coach outside of the organization to help him develop his skills to the next level. Other players actually try to hire Grover during Michael Jordan's time, but Michael refused to let him out. In fact, if you guys ever watched the series, The Last Dance, Michael was quoted saying something along the lines of, I didn't pay him that much money to train me. I paid him that much money so he wouldn't train anyone else. So after he was retired, he was okay with some other people using Grover's skill. And so told Kobe that if you want to get to the next level, you need to hire this guy. So Grover knew Michael and Kobe intimately, at least as intimately as anybody outside of their spouses could know them. And what he immediately recognized as a major difference between these two is that Kobe had this inhuman work ethic. See, both Michael and Kobe were extremely disciplined. However, according to Grover, Michael was a case of talent working hard, whereas Kobe was this case of outwork your weakness. And that's rare to see these days. Both men are going to be remembered by history. Both men have achieved freedom, but each of them took discipline and they used it to shortcut their life. Discipline is freedom. Now, I've set the stage here for the importance of discipline, and hopefully this helps you understand why we're going to be having a conversation around it tonight. What I want to talk about, and this is where I want to open it up for Sam and I to have a back and forth discussion, is now that we recognize how important discipline is, what are the distractions that are going to come up regardless of what pursuit you choose in life, whether it's athletics, whether it's business, whether it's personal hobbies? You're going to be attacked with distractions that are going to throw you off of the discipline, that's going to try to prevent you from doing the one kick 10,000 times. So, Sam, I want to pass this over to you, and we could throw the ball back and forth on this one.
That was so good. That entire thing was like, I was like, all right, I'm not gonna say anything today because that was like, you know what that felt like? If they were going to write a biography of some great, I don't know who, and then it was a forward to the book written by Marlon. So I could just see that. I could see that. One day when freaking Goggins or Dr. Jordan Peterson or some other epic human being who's taken discipline to another level, when they go and create something great and historians write a biography about them, I could imagine the forward being written by Marlon Johnson. That was great, dude. I mean, like, holy shit, that should be a speech on stage. That's a good keynote, actually. My God, the next time we get you on stage, bro, we have to. That's it. Okay, I want to hit on this because I think discipline is so important, and you know this. I think I've had a really interesting time the last 2 years mapping out how to articulate how to basically say one thing. And I think you've said it beautifully in that discipline is freedom. And I think a lot of people look at how you work and like the fact that you get up at, I don't even know, 4 or 5 in the morning, and then you run for 5 miles, and then you cold plunge, and then you pray, and then you have this ridiculously regimented lifestyle. And it's why, like, who was it? I think it was Richard. Was By the way, King Richard Knowles is in the chat. That's awesome. Um, he was just like, your biceps are jacked, and they absolutely are. And it's like in that type of routine, regimented routine, it reflects and it manifests in who you are as a human being. And so I think people, they look at you and they look how happy you are. And I think that sometimes people have this correlation between discipline and a certain attitude towards life. And I think that usually people who are extremely disciplined may not always be the happiest people. And here's what's actually really interesting. I've actually realized that the people who are the most disciplined, very often, they are the happiest people. They just show it in very different ways. And so it's like, we look at a guy like, let's say Alex Hormozy, right? Who's notorious for saying F happiness. I would argue that he's probably one of the happiest people I've seen on social media. And it's because his freedom has been unlocked by the discipline he's shown for a decade and a half, 2 decades of just relentless working. And it looks different on him than it looks on Marlon, than it looks on, Goggins, than it looks on Kobe Bryant. And it's like, people would say, it's like Kobe Bryant is a guy who's notorious for having a very specific attitude, and a lot of people would view as brooding and as intense and maybe not a very happy human being. And then I could almost guarantee that, Kobe being being up in heaven right now is probably, if he looked back at his life, even if it was cut short, he'd probably be like, I lived my life and my purpose, and that is happiness to me. And so I think that people look at discipline, and I'm derailing here, but this is my best way to articulate this. I think that people look at discipline the wrong way. And I think that people need to understand that discipline is the key to every form of freedom, and freedom is happiness. It's like, people want to be happy. It's like, you don't just become happy. You don't just wake up happy one day. It's not how that works. Happiness is something that, in my opinion, is a byproduct. It's a result of living intentionally, living purposefully. And very often it's like, our lives, you may not have the means that you need to live purposefully. You may not have the means to create the impact that you want to create. And if your happiness is attached to that income, great. You know what is the tool to unlock all of that? It's discipline. I'm of the mind of the last 2 years of my life that talent is completely irrelevant. I've actually realized this. Dude, you and I know so many people who are so astronomically talented, probably more talented than either of us, and who will basically not amount to anything because they lack the discipline to sit down and do it and go through the trenches. And that's what's required. And so I've come to the conclusion that talent is irrelevant. Innate talent like MJ had, or it's like Roger Federer, for example, who's like my hero in the world of tennis. He gave a speech, and it was at a university where he's an honorary degree. And it was really kind of interesting because he talks about how everyone described his play style as effortless. Because if you ever watch Roger Federer play, you'd be like, this dude doesn't break a sweat. He's 5 hours on the court. It's 110 degrees. And it's brutally intensive. The other guy is like falling over every point, and Roger literally is not even like sweating yet. He makes it look effortless. And it's funny, during this commencement speech for this graduating class, he said he hated that. He despised that saying. He despised when people, they robbed him of his achievement. They robbed him of his discipline by throwing a word like effortless onto him. And he's like, I may have had a really innate level of talent, but that innate level of talent doesn't compare to the level of discipline that I've showed throughout 20, 30 years of playing and perfecting my craft. And for everyone here, I want them to understand that discipline doesn't mean just being sad and being a drill sergeant. Discipline looks different in everyone's lives. Discipline looks different for me when I don't have a wife and kids, but it's going to look different for someone else who does have a wife and kids, right? And like, if you're trying to perfect your family life, discipline looks like being more present. And it looks like understanding that going out with the boys on Saturday is maybe a distraction when you need to have a movie night with your wife and like make sure you guys are connecting intentionally. And so the interesting thing for me, dude, is in the season that I'm in, where I'm in a very much a business growth period, I am very aware of what you've mentioned, and we can hit into this, is the world of distractions. And everyone who's here in the chat, or they're watching us or used to watching us, they're usually entrepreneurs who've been in it for a little bit, and they're probably trying to grow. And they're probably trying to scale, and they're probably trying to unlock the next level. I think that people need to understand that oh my God, it's one of the best quotes I've heard recently. And it was by Hermosi. And he said, it's never been easier in history to be successful, but it's never been easier to be distracted. And I loved that. And it's because it's absolutely true. And I think what everyone needs to start being aware of is in the ecosystems you are in the life that you're in, heck, even by even based on your age demographic and like income status, I can forward project which bottlenecks that are going to come up in your life. If you are a young couple, you've been together for 4 or 5 years, in your late 20s or early 30s, your next big, I don't want to say constraint, it's a blessing, but it's going to have certain things that you have to forward pace for. You're probably going to have a kid soon. And that will introduce a whole level of things that are going to take away from your business. And it's going to be important for you to forward pace on that so that when time does come to show discipline on either side, to be more present with the family or be like, babe, I need to take care of the business so we can pay the bills, right? The more you forward pace, the more prepared you are, the better those transition periods become and the easier they are to navigate. And so for me, I want to take like a lot of people here who are in like mentorships, for example. Have you noticed, bro, that everyone on earth is doing a boot camp right now? It's like,
Yeah.
dude, I had like 3 people in the last 2 days ask me if I can come and speak about scaling. 3 people last like actually like 4 or 5 days asked me if I can speak about scaling at their boot camps and their workshops that they're doing. And what's interesting to me, and this is nothing against those people. I love everyone. I want everyone to win. And all 3 of them, mind you, they've never even made $1 million. Like they've never done 7 figures. They haven't done 7 figures in a year. They're like, and I'm like, that it's not the thing that matters the most, but all I'm trying to get at is that, like, who told you to do this? Why are we, this is a distraction. And what does it get? And if we start looking at these things, and very often these distractions, man, they're attractive. And Hermosa calls them the woman in the red dress. And like, the story, the woman in the red dress, she's not ugly. She's extremely attractive. And so for all these folks, it's maybe it's doing a boot camp, maybe it's doing a workshop, maybe it's launching a coaching program, maybe it's, I don't know, a new strategy that someone just started talking about because all of a sudden all the influencers this past year have only been talking about freaking co-living or novations. And it's like, that's fine. But if you were building towards a goal and for 2 years straight you had a specific vehicle, and then just because someone online somewhere else who's not paying your damn bills says that this is what they're doing, and all of a sudden you're entertaining the idea of entertaining something new, you are lacking discipline. And like, here's the interesting thing, man. I think it's, we look at the word discipline, and you and I know that like to be focused means to say no to things. That's literally
Right.
what it means. The most focused human being is the person who does only the thing they need to do, and then they do not touch anything else. Interesting thing about discipline is it's not just like doing the thing you're supposed to be doing. Discipline also means not entertaining any other ideas. And like a disciplined human being will hear an idea and then immediately be like, nope, not for me. Nope, that's a trap. And so I think all of these folks, and like our people specifically who follow us, like I want you all to be so aware of how many distractions are around you right now. And because Marlon and I get asked to speak on stage quite a bit, you guys, Marlon, it's okay if I break the fourth wall with like stages in a little bit and like events.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Deadpool.
So guys, so with stages, right? With stages specifically, if we're asked to speak on a stage, our job, primarily outside of giving value to the audience, is to help the event host get what they're trying to get from that room. And then Marlon, what are they typically trying to get from that room? When someone does a 2-day workshop or a boot camp for, from $100 all the way up to $1,000 for a VIP ticket, $2,000 maybe, what are they all trying to do by the end of that event?
9 out of 10 times there's going to be an upsell, whether it's to their own product or to another product, but there's typically going to be an upsell. The reason they put you in a room is so throughout the weekend they can indoctrinate you and then get you to a place where you are emotionally ready.
Yep. And then as speakers, as people who speak on stages, our job, Marlon will come in very often about mindset because he's the goat of mindset. I come in about scaling. And the tricky thing with me is people will ask me to come in and speak on stage to talk about business success and growth. And then what they will tend to do is sell an upsell package for $20,000, $30,000, right? After I've spoken on stage. And, and I'm not the only speaker. There's going to be several usually. I'm just part of a lineup, and it all curates to this crescendo event, which is the selling of whatever they want to sell. And here's where I am a little bit, and like I said, I want everyone to win. I'm okay with that. My thing with you guys, if you're sitting in the crowd, I want you to understand that the workshop, and this is how I want you guys to think about these things, that workshop event, that 2-day event that you're going to fly out to another town for, because you're like, I'm just going to see my friends. Right? That's the goal. It's like, I'm just going to see my friends. Marley, you and I know this. You and I know that when our friends are like, hey, man, let's go fly out. Let's go do something. Let's go to an event, a conference, and use it as an excuse to hang out. You and I spot that crap a mile away because we're like, dude, we would love to hang out with you. How about we just go snowboarding and just do it outside of an event? Because we know that the potential distraction and the potential interruption to our discipline is the fact that we're going to go to that 2-day event. That entire room is going to be curated to get us to feel a certain thing. And by the end of the 2 days, they're probably going to put something in front of us that would massively derail the discipline that we've built. And so for us, it's not that we're saying no to our friend who wants to hang out. We're saying no to the injection of distractions in our life. And I want everyone to understand that. Like, this is always the case. In every step, everything that you're considering doing, I want you to start thinking about, like, not is like the thing in front of you. It's like the gateway drug almost always, right? Like, co-living is, I mean, like, it's a great way to monetize a single family property. Like, I get it. I completely get it. But now you have to become a capital raiser. Now you have to become a deal finder, and most of the deals suck. So you have to start running like an acquisitions business. And so it's like, you thought like co-living was like the thing, and you thought that's what you were signing on for. 6 months later, 8 months later, if you're being real about it, what does it look like? You're running a freaking acquisitions business doing direct to seller marketing, or you're on the phones 8 hours a day with wholesalers and agents begging for deals to be sent to you. And then what you end up realizing is, oh my God, I'm so far off my path, and I wasted 8 months of my life that I can't get back. And so I want people to be very aware of the potential distractions in front of them. Yeah, as you can tell, this is like something I think about a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're spot on. And to that point, there's two things I want to hit on that you said, which the first is when we make that decision to go to or not go to events, because as disciplined as we can be, and I consider myself a decently disciplined person. I consider Sam a very disciplined person. And at the same token, I'm aware of my ability to get distracted, and I avoid, to the best of my ability, putting myself in scenarios and situations that can make distraction an easier possibility, right? It's like, I'm a guy, for example. Imagine I was married. I'm not married right now, but if I'm a married man, I'm probably going to avoid going to strip club, right? Like, I wouldn't really want to put myself in that situation to even be tempted. And so if you're building something and you start to say yes, you want to start to create and design your environment in a way that it starts to lessen the likelihood of distraction. Start to curate your environment on purpose, where maybe this means you start to choose different friends. You start to choose different things that are coming in through your Instagram, through your TikTok, through your social media. You start to control and say, I'm only going to allow myself to listen to a handful of voices. And I couldn't help but think about what you mentioned as far as saying no to everything else. And you get to that point of you're not even entertaining opposite thoughts. Like, true discipline is when you stop entertaining other thoughts. And my mind flashed back to last year when we were doing the Pair to Park, the Run Across America. So for any of you that are new to the channel, you might not know this. Last year, my buddies and I, Andrew Linder, shout out to Andrew, we did a run across America. So we actually started in California in Santa Monica Pier, and on foot, we ran from Santa Monica Pier, Central Park, New York, over 79 days. We raised $111,000 to fight human trafficking, and it was an absolutely amazing experience. 79 days on the road, 40 to 45 miles of running per day. Now, on Instagram, it looked fucking phenomenal. It was a cool thing. We made these cool Instagram reels. We were getting news stations to come out and record us and film us. So we were like these little local celebrities, and it just all seemed like fun and games. Haha, everyone's having a good time. The reality now, behind the scenes, when the cameras weren't rolling, Let's take you back to week one. Week one, we were freaking out. Week one, here's what started to occur. The RV that we were supposed to be living in didn't show up for our run until about 8 days into the actual run across America. It was 6 guys operating out of one car without a home base, all with one backpack because all of our suitcases and luggage were all in this RV that was getting further and further behind us because we were moving directionally away from it 40 miles a day. We were in a place where by day 3, our bodies were absolutely wrecked because within a 3-day time frame, we had put on over 120 miles on our body. So now we're in some of the worst pain we've ever felt. We have no supplies. And then when you open up a map to see where you are inside of this entire situation, you realize you haven't even gotten out of the first state. You're supposed to run across the entire nation and you're still in California. And so it was beginning to be disheartening. And by the time we got to day 4 and day 5, where we're supposed to be averaging 40, 45 miles a day, day 4 and day 5, we only completed 30 miles on each of those days. And it took us almost 14 hours each day to finish it because of how slow we were moving, because of the amount of pain that we were. And so do you think we started to think about doubt? Do you think we started to worry that it's not going to happen, that we started to visualize different events occurring where maybe we give up, maybe we call it off, maybe we try this run again in 2025 or in 2026? And so our minds yet hadn't been disciplined because we were still entertaining the escape hatch. We were still entertaining. And I can speak to it personally. I know for a fact I personally was entertaining it because Andrew and I kept journal entries. And when I go back and I reread some of those journal entries that we kept each night, in the beginning, the self-talk was like, crap, like you might have made a mistake signing up for this and telling everybody it was going to be done. But something interesting happened along the way. Because we stayed in the fire, we started to adapt. Our bodies started to adapt. Our mindsets started to adapt. And at some point within the first few weeks, we mentally made up our mind that, you know what? Fuck it. We are going to finish no matter what. And what's so interesting, I always have people ask me, like, what was the hardest part? And I always tell them it was actually in the beginning when I was the freshest, because in the beginning, I was still entertaining the maybe this won't work. I was still entertaining the plan B. I was still entertaining the option for this not to be completed. But once the mind was fully made up, a fascinating thing occurred where I no longer entertained the thought of we're not going to finish. Andrew no longer entertained the thought that we're not going to finish. So there was no longer any useless energy going towards it. We weren't even entertaining people asking us that question on what do you think will happen. I don't think about that. I haven't even considered it. Very much like Mike Tyson used to say this. Like they said, well, what do you think will happen if you lose? He's like, I never even thought that. You're the first person that I've ever heard say those words. My mind can't even imagine what losing would look like. I'm not a loser. I'm a champion. And so that discipline it came from putting yourself in the fire and actually allowing yourself to go through the suffering and to go through the doubt and to go through the worry. And the reason I think I'm bringing this up is because I feel that I can relate to being inside that fire, to being inside that first week, that first 2 weeks of doing this run, doing this big thing that we never accomplished, that I was worried that maybe we bit off more than we can chew, that maybe this dream was too big. Maybe this is impossible. Maybe we're not the right people for it. But by staying in it, day in and day out, by going through those days and living with the doubt, living with the worry, and allowing myself to keep moving forward, just taking these incremental steps forward, eventually that weakness was purified from me, right? It was purged out of the body. And so in your business, you're probably going to find yourself in that season at some point. Very much like I mentioned with the 10,000 kicks. At some point, you're going to have this internal debate between you, and no one else is around. It's going to be this internal debate with your heart and with your head. And you're going to start questioning, why did you even begin this? Is it even worth it to keep going? You're going to start to see the escape hatches in the form of other business opportunities. You're going to see the escape hatch in the form of friends who are going to accept you if you quit. You're going to see the escape hatch in the form of your family that's going to love you regardless of what result you produce. You're going to see all these things that are saying, yo, come hang out, come chill, come take a seat next to me. And I'm going to challenge you to push through it. I'm going to challenge you to stay in the fire. I'm going to challenge you to pay the price. I'm going to challenge you to suffer longer because you're capable of it. And I'm going to tempt you with this thought, this idea that you are going to discover a stronger version of yourself if you allow yourself to go through that pain, that pain isn't actually going to kill you, that pain isn't going to destroy you, but it will destroy a part of you. And that part of you that it destroys is a weaker part. It was a cancer that was living inside of you. I want to grow stronger people. And by the way, guys, I'm saying this to y'all, but these are also the words I speak to myself. Like, this is some of the internal dialogue I have with me. And thankfully, this is actually some of the external dialogue Sam will have with me. Right? Like, Sam's one of those friends that will call me out on my BS. Sam's one of those friends that will remind me, hey, dude, you know you can stay in the fire a lot longer. You know you've been here before in the past in another chapter, and now it's time to get back in. It's time to ride that bus through hell again so that you can get to the top of the mountain.
Isn't it so interesting that isn't it so interesting that you'll be in a period where stuff will happen. You'll be disciplined to a degree. Distractions will come up. Shiny objects, friends doing all these stupid things, whatever. And the grass always seems greener. Always, every time, almost every time. And you will eventually learn to have the discipline to say, nope, that's a trap, and I'm not going down that route, and I'm going to stick with where I'm going to go. And then you will have an incremental increase in the quality of your life as an entrepreneur and your development. And what's funny, Marlon, is that a year later, you will still run into the same thing again, and it will look different, but at its core, it's the exact same. And what people don't realize is that you actually, it's like, Pace Morby is one who told me this. I was talking to him a long time ago. I was with him. I think I was with him in Vegas for a day, just like one-on-one. And he told me, and I was asking about the level of growth that he was having, this astronomical trajectory growth. And he said that every level has a new devil. And I totally get it. And here's what I've actually realized, coming full circle on this a few years later, is that it's the same devil. It just looks a little bit different. And once you understand it's the same devil over and over and over and over again, you become that much more insulated at it. So it doesn't matter what form. And this is, I'm actually, I know you are, I'm not religious whatsoever, but I love looking at, I think the Bible is phenomenal storytelling. And I think I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, some of the stories in here and the lessons you can learn from these tales are so, so important. And one interesting thing with a lot of the Judeo-Christian faith system is that the devil, whenever he is doing his bidding, he likes to shapeshift and he likes to change forms and he likes to manipulate. And then the people who can spot him understand that it doesn't matter what he looks like on the outside, what the distraction is, what the trap is. It looks different each time, but at its core, it's the exact same thing. And what is that? It is meant to derail you from your purpose. And once you understand that and you can label it as such, for me, I call them traps. Like internally in my internal dialogue, when someone says, hey, we're doing ERC and we're making a ton of money. Hey, we're doing, for me, it's like Saddle 2 coaching. It's like, hey, we're doing coaching and we made, 6 figures our first 30 days of doing it. Hey, we're selling info products and this, that, and all of these things. And to them, it's like all this money and this growth and brand and people saying our names and blah, 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 blah. And I've just gotten really disciplined at saying that's a trap. That's a trap. That's a different trap, but it's the same thing at the end of the day. They're all a trap. And whatever label you need to use to slap on these things to protect your purpose and your mission, you need to find it. And so I know a lot of people, a lot of people of the Christian faith, they have this saying, it's like whenever anything bad or temptation comes up, they just say, oh, that's the devil trying to get a hold of me, right? I love that they have a label that they can associate with it so they can spot the problem a mile away. And a lot of times people think, oh, new level, new opportunity, it's different. No. It's the exact same as the opportunity that you bypassed last year. It's the exact same as the one from 2 years ago that almost derailed you off your path because you had a mentor in a program who said this is what they were doing. And you didn't have the discernment to understand the full scope of everything behind it. the actual cost of the distraction. And so, bro, I think this is so freaking good. And I applaud you for being, because I remember, when you were going through that run across America, it's like I always wondered, I'm like, one, you guys had like a mini tribe of people, and I think that could help. Right now, let's talk about this. Ooh, this is so good when it comes down to discipline and staying on path. You had an accountability group. And so how important, right? Because people have all these distractions who are coming in. What are some safeguards that they can put into their lives to help them be protected against these things?
Bro, that is arguably the biggest cheek tapped into said, because that was one of the things that made it possible. And this is something you and I have had conversation about this because people know, for those of them that know you well, that you're ex law enforcement, and Andrew's law enforcement. And so when we study things like military, when you study Navy SEALs and the Green Berets, you see that there's this emphasis on your team, your squad, your tribe, and they recognize that other people can unlock your potential. That when you come together as a collective, think Power Rangers, Megazords powering up, think all of these like cartoons and animes when like the five pieces came together, the whole was so much greater than the parts. So when it came to the run across America, what actually made it extremely viable was the fact that the guys that were chosen for this project were all totally bought in. Everybody was on the same mission. Everybody was equally dedicated. At one point, funny enough, and we don't talk about this often because we're still really good friends with the guy. At least I personally am very much good friends. We had one person who wasn't fully bought in the same way that everyone else was bought in. And we did start to, friction was being created on that trip. Issues and challenges were occurring that didn't need to occur, that had the potential to derail the finish. And so that person, we actually ended up releasing that person midway through the project. So the crew dropped down from 6 guys to 5 guys. And when it was just the 5 guys again, and it was everybody had this equal buy-in, this equal discipline, this equal fuck yeah, we're gonna do anything that we need to do to make this happen to get it done. We started to see a revamping of the energy. You started to see more things were getting accomplished, and the growth was exponential. And so it's similar in life and business because, and you actually, you and I had a conversation this weekend, and you said something to me that has been reverberating in my brain, which I'm grateful. And this is why I have friends like you. This is why I'm grateful for our friendship. You said, hey man, you and I haven't talked in a little while. And I'm just curious as to who's your influences right now. And when you asked me that question, I actually went back home and I pulled out my notebook and I sat down and I said, who is him right now? And I took an audit. And this is something I normally do quarterly. I haven't done it in a little while because it helps me see, where are my thoughts coming from? Are the people in my life in alignment with the direction that I'm moving in? Or am I holding on to people in my life because they were in alignment in the last season? And so you want to be able to curate. This is for you guys who are listening, where you might be struggling with your own discipline and you're wondering why. Because internally, somewhere in your heart, you're like, but dude, I want it. I really like, you don't know how bad I want it. Think about it. I dream about it. I write goals about it. I've invested into courses. I've invested in the program. I've invested in the coaching. Like, you have proven to me through some level of meaningful action that you actually want it. You've proven to yourself that through some level of meaningful action that you want it, but then you still keep getting derailed. And so I'm going to ask you, who are your friends? Who are your influences? Who are the people that you're keeping around? Because they may love you. They may even mean well for you. However, they may be current distractions in this season now that you've made a decision. Now that you've made a decision, you might recognize that you need to release these people. And this is something where I look back at, I remember Kobe Bryant talked about this, where he was being interviewed by Patrick Bet-David. So one of the last great interviews Kobe Bryant ever did. If you guys haven't seen this one, go and look it up. I think it was in 2019 or 2020. Patrick Bet-David had Kobe Bryant out. He's wearing a black tuxedo throughout the interview. And he says to Kobe, he says, Imagine you and I are friends growing up. We're cousins growing up. We're really tight while we're in middle school and high school. But then you go on and you pursue this basketball career. You have this sick work ethic. You live the life that you're currently living. What happens to our relationship? Without hesitation, Kobe says, "Oh, it suffered. No question about it." He said it suffered. That's the reality. He said, "Look, I missed birthdays, weddings, engagement parties. I wasn't there for these because I was giving my all of my focus, my energy, my attention, my free time was given to improving and getting better at building out this dream, building out myself as the best basketball player, following and sticking to this goal I set." And so later on in life, I came back and we were working on rekindling. And he's like, the truth is, some people allowed me to rekindle and others didn't. And that was the price that had to be paid. And he said, I had teammates who, for them, they weren't willing to pay that price. And that's why we're here interviewing me and not them. And that's the reality. Because I used to think, well, it's not worth it. And it might not be worth it for you. But understand, there is somebody out there who wants the exact same thing you want, who wants the customers you want, who wants the properties you want, who want the wife that you want, who wants the money, the dollars, the house. They want the exact same things as you. And they are willing to pay that price. They are willing to push a little bit harder. They are willing to stay up a little bit later, wake up a little bit earlier, invest the money a little bit sooner. They're willing to take the risk. They're willing to make themselves look foolish. They're willing to do what's required, not just what they want to do. And they're willing to do it consistently day in and day out. And if you think that they're doing this accidentally, they will be aware that you're out there. They're aware that you want it as well. And they will use that fuel and that knowledge to push even harder. If you ever asked, and if you heard this interview where Kobe had a player that came in, this player was thinking, you know what, I'm hot stuff. I'm going to show up to the court at 3 a.m. to get some practice in before tonight's game. And he said by the time he showed up to the court at 3 a.m. thinking no one else is going to be here, Kobe was already in there sweating bullets. He'd already been working out. So the dude laces up his shoes, starts working out, works out for an hour, Kobe's still going. Works out for an hour and a half, Kobe's still going. The guy stops and starts taking a break because he's like, I got to get ready. Kobe's still going. He says Kobe's not doing these passive workout. He's practicing at game level. He's moving at game level intensity. Later that night, they play the game. Kobe puts up something like 40-something, 50-something points and just absolutely demolishes the other team. And so the guy, just another player in the game, he's on the opposite team. At the end of the game, he's like, I got to go ask Kobe, like, what was up with that? And he says, yo, I saw you in the gym this morning. I mean, you must have been there an hour before me. You stayed after me, and then you came out and played the game. Like, what was the deal with that? And Kobe says, yeah, I know. That I stayed in there that long because you were watching. And I wanted to let you know that I am willing to outwork anybody. That's who you're up against, guys. You're up against people that think like that. And so you can either choose to be the person that everyone else is scared of, or you can choose to be scared of that person. There's only two types of people out here. Which one are you going to be?
My background athletically was in tennis, and it's one of those interesting things because I picked up tennis really late in my career. And like tennis is one of those sports where if you don't start it when you're like 5, you're late. If you start it in like elementary school, like you're late if you want to like go and play D1. And it was an interesting thing because I live in Central California. It's extremely hot here. It's super dry, super desert. Just it's brutal here sometimes. And it was interesting when I got to a certain high level, I realized that there were people who were infinitely more talented than I could ever hope to be. Like especially a lot of these guys from Europe. The freaking Europeans were insane, dude. There were dudes who came from Europe and I'm like, you have been touched by God with how good you are at this. Like things that, take me years and just brutal 8-hour sessions to even like hit one shot. I remember there were times where I would drill certain shots 8 hours in like the peak heat by myself, just dying on the court. And like the next day, these same guys would go and do that 100 times over effortlessly, like the shot that I was hoping to replicate. And when I did it half-assed compared to they did. And then here's what I realized. That talent is not always fair. And there's truth to that. There are some people out there on earth who are just genetically different. There's something about them. There's something about their DNA is different. Now, here's the thing. Discipline is the great equalizer. You can be like there are people who are so astronomically talented, but all it takes is one person to show up who's willing to say one key differential thing. And like my greatest coach I've ever had in my life, his name is James Mackay. I haven't talked to him in forever. He has no idea that a lot of the excellence that I've been able to achieve in my young entrepreneurial journey is thanks to him. He has no freaking clue. He's I think he's the assistant coach for the University of Tennessee. They've actually like made it to the NCAA finals like a few times. They're like the #1 team in the country a little bit ago. Phenomenal player, phenomenal, by far the greatest coach I've ever had in my life in anything I've ever done. And James, I remember there was a session where we were training one-on-one, and I was just going through it. It was like 105 degrees. And if you guys don't know about tennis courts, the sediment in tennis courts, it radiates heat up. So it's like if it's 105 degrees from like sun, it's going to hit the ground will absorb it and it'll reflect back on, and it'll sit like within about 5 feet of the ground. And so like it might be 105 degrees like everywhere else, but about 5 feet off the tennis court where like your core is going to be, right? It's going to be like 110, 115. It's brutal. And there was this one brutal day where it's like, I remember I had holes in my shoes because the friction was burning through. I think my toes were bleeding. I think I'd already threw up once or twice. And I was being a bitch about it. And then we just weren't getting it right. We weren't getting it right. And just like everything I was doing, so I wasn't putting it all in. And we were coming up at the end of like our 2-hour long session. And I was like, don't we have to get going? He's like, you have to get home. He's like, no, I got nowhere to be. And then he could tell that I didn't ask that out of respect for his schedule. I asked that because I was looking for the eject button. I asked that, hey, aren't we running up on time because you have to be home soon, right? That was bullshit. I didn't care about him and his schedule. He knew that was me saying, and that was my way of fishing for a way out, right? And he's like, no, I got nowhere to be tonight. And he sat me down. He's like, Sam, you got somewhere to be in the morning? And I was like, no, I've got nowhere. I've got like tomorrow's the day off. He's like, oh, okay, cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to treat this night like it's the last freaking night that you have on earth, because you have nowhere else to be tomorrow morning. You have nowhere to be tonight. You've got nowhere to be tomorrow morning. So all we're going to do is work and work and work and work and pretend that there is no tomorrow. And then it was interesting. What he did for me in that moment was he taught me how to remove the eject button. Taught me how to stop looking for it, because in my mind I turned it off. It wasn't there. I didn't look for it because I knew it wasn't there anymore. And what ended up happening is we went for like an hour and a half extra, and I found a new level to physicality. I found a new level to mental grit, to all of these things. And I'll never forget it. At the end of the session, I remember asking him something to the effect of like, how'd you know to go there with me for that? Because we unlocked something I've been working so hard for. And it was a special type of forehand, whatever. And I was like, how'd you know to go there with me with that? And I'm like, because none of my coaches have ever been able to like get through to me this way. And you're a guy as an athlete, you've had tons of coaches and mentors in your life. And some coaches will say the same thing to you, but there's some coaches who know how to say the same message, but just a different way. And for whatever reason, it unlocks paradigm shifts in you. And I'm like, how'd you know to say that to me? And it was interesting. It was actually like really fascinating to me. And he was like, Sam, you started playing tennis not so long ago. You're not the best in the world. You never will be, and that's okay. And you're not going to be the most talented. And he's like, you don't realize that all the players that you're going to play against, they're going to be people who are infinitely more talented than you. And he was like, Sam, you know the problem with talented people? They're just not willing to suffer more than you are. And what I'm teaching you to do is love suffering. And then he's like, every match where you go up against someone who's better than you, cool. Just ask them the question of, are they willing to stay on court and bleed longer, throw up on the court, go through shoes? Are they willing to actually suffer and put their body on the line? Because all the talented guys, they aren't. And then that became like a compass for me moving forward, especially in like desert climate tennis, which is brutal. And we had all these guys who were infinitely more talented, but they were on like scholarship to these amazing, universities where they had like the best weather all year round. And then you quickly realize, oh, these guys aren't used to playing in 110 degrees. They're not used to that. They're used to 75 on the coast. They're not used to 110 where it's suffering. And then I don't have to be better than you. I just have to get the ball back as many times as humanly possible. So I keep you on the court longer underneath that 110, 115 degree sun. And then the question becomes, are you willing to suffer longer than I am? And the funny fact is this, and this was gnarly. I realized that in a moment with these folks, with a lot of these guys who are just extremely talented, halfway through the match, they're going to start asking themselves the question, and they'll start doing what you did. They'll start doing what I did, and they will start looking for an eject button. They will look for that safety hatch that just gets them out, right? And what's funny is when that happens, they're looking to get out. They're looking to end. They're looking to just like hit the panic button and walk out. Crazy thing for them is they didn't realize 6 months ago I turned off the eject button completely and I cut power to it. There is no eject button for me. So guess what? You and me, we're going to suffer today. And then it was amazing. And a lot of people don't realize that. That was a lesson that I learned in undergrad in tennis. And it's something that I've carried with me in my work in the government, in my work as an entrepreneur, especially right now as I'm chasing an 8-figure exit over the next 24 months. One thing that I'm chasing and I'm understanding about everyone around me is all of these guys who are brilliant. They're brilliant entrepreneurs around me. And what I've realized about, they're smarter than me. They're better connected than me. They have more liquidity. They have more money. They have more everything. But they're not willing to just suffer long enough to hit the goal that I am. And I'm like, you know the best part about this, Marlon? There was no divine intervention required. There was no special DNA required. There was no magic touch required outside of the right mentor at the right time who spotted that I needed that. And then moving forward, I'm like, put me up against the most talented people on earth. And it's like, they'll be better than me. But it's like, are they willing to suffer? And it's like, if they're not, and if I can spot that, that's my game. That's how I win. And I want you guys to, as we had Stratton on the call, just so you guys know, people who are about the game at a really, really freaking high level. I know we're really big on the collaboration over competition thing. Guys, the best entrepreneurs, the people that you want to be like or you think you want to be like, behind the scenes, they all have this assassin-like mentality. Like all of them, the most cuddly teddy bear personalities. When you meet them one-on-one and you have a relationship with them a lot like the way that Marlon and I do, oh my God, they're cutthroat for a reason. They're not bad people, but they know that they're here to win. And they know that in order to win, someone else has to lose. And that's the thing that I think about, you know, I look at guys like Roger and Kobe even, because like they're totally opposite. They're totally freaking opposite human beings. Their personality styles, I should say. Kobe, very, you know, he didn't really, I would say this. Kobe was an amazing athlete. He may not, and in all of his instances, carried himself as the greatest ambassador for the sport in like a family friendly kind of way. Roger's like very kind of polished in that sense, right? He's like almost PR trained, right? And Kobe is like, I don't really care. I'll say what I want to say. And it's just the truth of it all. What I've realized is all of those people, whether they're super nice or like absolute assassins with Mamba mentality, they all understand that not everyone is going to win the game. In order for me to win, someone else has to lose. And so the moment that I decide you and I are competing, it's like, it's game on. And bro, I'm telling you right now, I look at everyone who follows us and everyone that you and I like, who we have constant DM conversations with, that's like become such a filter for me, is I'm like, God, you just started something 3 weeks ago and you're not getting results. And you're like, you're already like looking for the next way out. And like me mentally, I'm like, you're not ready. I hope you will be one day, but it's like, you're not ready yet to suffer. And it's like, I look at the guys who come into my DMs and like maybe they have a military background or a law enforcement background or an athletics background or something, or they're marathon runners, or guys who do, guys who are in the fight sports. Oh my God, fight sports guys, they have this dialed and they're like, dude, I will bleed for this. And it's like something that Stratton said the other week that stuck with me. Remember something his friend / mentor told him when he was up against it and having some level of doubt when he was providing for his kids. And he said, we do this or we die. And I was like, damn. I'm like, by the way, that's become a core value in all of my businesses now. That's like, I let the team know, I'm like, that's a core value. We do this or we die. Like, there is no in between. And if you want an in between, cool, go somewhere else. Like, you're just not going to be on this team because this team's going to go big. Dude, oh shit, we are over time, man.
Bro, I think that is an amazing place to end. I mean, the chat definitely is loving this conversation tonight. So here's what I'm going to ask you guys: if you got value from this, not even if, the fact that you're here, we had viewership stay steady all throughout this entire episode. You got value from this, no question about it. Do this, hit the like button. Make sure you do that. That helps share this out with many people. And then I need you to send this out to someone else who needs to hear this message. In fact, who said it? I saw Tim Yu. What's up, Tim? Good buddy of ours said this is business gospel right now. So if you believe that, spread the good word. Guys, next week we'll be back on Tuesday for another episode of the Think Big podcast. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Share the